And I give everybody an opportunity to try to remember to write 24 when you're doing dates. All my life, I was always a half a year behind catching up. So the the agenda for tonight is called to order at this time. Approval of minutes, superintendent's report, assistant superintendent report. I guess Anita still is not able.
No, she's coming. She'll be here.
Okay, great. Director of Finance and Operations report, school committee member reports, report on the annual Burrough program, a Burrough renovation presentation, citizens' request, a quarterly budget update report, Aquifer catch basin upgrades, electric bus discussion, and Assabet Valley Collaborative second quarterly update with three different details that will follow. And then after that, the adjournment of the school committee. So with that, everybody who is able, please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America,
to the republic for which it stands. So with that, is there a motion for approval of minutes of the meeting of December 13th of last year?
I would like to move to approve the minutes from December 13th.
Now that we have a full committee, would there be a second on the minutes?
I'll second them.
Oh, you didn't let him do it, huh?
No, I did not.
All right.
Let him catch his breath.
Is there any discussion on the minutes? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. 500. Happy New Year, Yakub. Well, that got us to superintendent's report.
Thank you. Happy New Year, everybody. It has been an incredibly quiet vacation, which is my favorite kind. We usually have more going on campuses than people realize, and so it can be really busy in terms of updates and things going on and monitoring. But our buildings, we had a lot of heavy rain, you remember, and we really did well with not having any building problems and all of the activities that were going on. It was really both balanced but pretty quiet as vacations go, which was kind of nice. It gave me a chance to work quietly and catch up. I think as we look at 2024, it just feels good to have a rhythm on the year that has been pretty uninterrupted. You know, we've had weather in our favor, we've had no bus strikes, we've had, it's just been normal, which is very, very nice. I'll take it. That kind of continuity really provides an opportunity to dig in deeply with learning and to have time with students that you're not trying to catch up. And so I think from that standpoint, the year feels incredibly smooth. And when you're running a public school system of 4,000 students, I mean, it's relative when we say smooth. There's just life in the schools, and it's always busy, but it's been really enjoyable to this point in the year. It feels really good to turn towards 24, and so I just want to do a moment of foreshadowing for you. There's a window between when we complete the budget, which you kind of forget how consuming that is as it builds up and takes our meeting time until we vote the budget right before vacation. So when we turn our attention towards presenting some new items to you. And then also you start to receive some reports leading towards the close of the year and finalization of transitions. And so one of the things I just want to call out is that it's kind of nice. Tonight you're going to get some new information with the busing information that will be presented to you. And it's the start of a process. It's a beginning of opening a door to feeling like there's enough information to now share with you and let you as a committee begin to take some time to develop a plan. right? So there's a forward-looking future opportunity, and so tonight's educational to bring you up to speed, and so it's just kind of nice to come into that with some brain space and some new energy to look at that. You're going to get an update from a grant that the town is pursuing regarding Aquifer upgrades, and I think you need to have a conversation. So while there's space, I think it's important to dig in. That takes time to review those reports and to come prepared to discuss them. So we try to time those to come at this stage in the year. I think you're also, as you foreshadow moving forward, reports and information that you can start to anticipate as a committee. So items that you're going to see between now and really April. We're going to have a chance, again, for you to get the annual fall sports report of the completion of implementation of the fall season. That's an annual report. You're going to get a chance to get the mid-year superintendent's goals update. We'll come to you, not this next meeting, but the meeting after. And you're also going to get the mid-year strategic plan update. So tomorrow, WLT, the leadership team, will start looking at all the goal work. They'll pull it back out. They'll look at what objectives have been targeted and met and where they have work to do. And I fold that into the mid-year report for you, and then you'll get an end-of-year report. So you're going to be taking in content, hearing about our progress on goals, and it gives you a chance to ask for redirection or new areas of focus on the work. You're also going to then move into some final reports where you're going to get to see the HR report, which is the annual report that comes before you. You'll get a report on Chartwell's, their financial outlooks for the year and future planning. You're going to get as well the English Language Learning Department comes and does an annual report as an overall district. There are some reports that are selective and they don't always rotate into the year, and so we'll look at strategically what we have time to present. The other thing that will come to you that will be an interesting start of a conversation is you have a couple meetings to look at this. We're going to put in front of you the discussion of the school calendar. And I know you want to discuss a range of options for some possible changes to the layout of that calendar. So we'll present, Daniel's prepping a memo that he's been working on for a while with me and a couple other people to put in front of you for that discussion. So you have good choices and you can look at that and then start that conversation. And then you get a meeting break in between that, or two if you need it, before you would vote that final calendar. So just projecting ahead, you know, your meetings are few and we need to use them really effectively. And so you're just going to get more content in packets. I just like to forecast that for you and then give you time to digest material. So we're really dug in on presenting and getting that stuff ready for you. So it's just good to kind of look ahead. So if, you know, that cues questions in your mind for things you want to see or questions you might have, you know, you can direct those to me. So it's a busy time of year. We really focus on depth now. And, you know, kind of mission forward through close of year, but staying on those goals and going more deeply and then reporting that back to you. So I feel like we're in a very, very good place. And I look forward to tonight's discussions as well. And that's my report tonight.
Thank you. Daniel?
I'll give you just one quick update. The State Department of Education has something called the Student Opportunity Plan Report that the districts are required to amend every 3 years and update, and something the school committee has to approve. And it goes back to legislation that was passed like 4 years ago when they did the state allocation formula for sending money to school systems, and they basically want to see in the student opportunity plans that you're thoughtfully addressing needs of the most vulnerable students in the district in terms of like academically vulnerable students. So the report is kind of pro forma, but it's something that we need to do, and I will, you know, be preparing it over the next few weeks, and I would say by sometime in February I'll give you a draft to look at, and then you'll have to vote on it by at the end of March, I believe. But I just wanted to foreshadow that for you. That's the only thing I have for an update.
So we all had a relaxing break, and at the high school we're starting to prep for midterms. And I just wanted to tell everyone about the Trex recycling program. They're collecting soft plastics, clean soft plastics, and there are drop boxes at Mill Pond and the high school.
Thank you. Yoku?
Nothing to report.
Kristen?
I just want to share about the 6th annual Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Community Celebration that is happening on Monday, January 15th from 4 to 6 o'clock at the Westborough High School. We are asking that folks register ahead of time, and more information can be found at the Westborough Connects website. So to see everyone there. Thanks.
Very good. Steve?
I have nothing to report tonight.
Sarah?
I don't have anything to report tonight.
Very good, and I'll just remind everybody that we're waiting on bids that will be received shortly for the school projects that'll be presented at town meeting, and looking forward to those. Hopefully, we'll get decent numbers so that, in fact, we can put those projects, start those projects, I guess, so we can put that work to bed. And I have no other comments tonight.
I would add one thing to Kristen's note, because I meant to pull the Screenagers number 3, the third movie of Screenagers, will be hosted, and that's hosted by Rotary, the schools, Westborough Connects, a variety of groups. The last 2 movies have been well attended, and there's been a panel at one and discussion at others. And so this third one really looks at the impacts of social media on mental health and also on addiction. And so it's of the 3, I got a very targeted focus, but it's well worth attending, and the conversations that come out of that have been really meaningful. I also wanted to highlight that Screenagers 2 was viewed by, I think, the whole high school faculty, and they did some professional development work. So there's some good integration around professional kind of learning that we present to the parents in the community. We overlap some of it to students and then faculty as well. So we just get some opportunities for some common exposure to challenges we face in education and in raising kids and in society, with both the benefits and challenges of technology. So I think, certainly, and I don't know, I'll look it up while other people are talking, but we can call out the date on that. I know it's there as well, but a really nice opportunity for people to consider going. And they have a targeted age group for that I think is, 6th grade and up in terms of, students attending, but I think for parents, all ages.
Yeah, it's next week, Tuesday, January 9th at 7 p.m. at the high school.
And people will get another targeted push from us that goes out to advertise it, so I encourage people to go.
Okay. Let's move on to the Burrough report.
Thank you. So one of our first annual reports, an opportunity for you to get an update on, programs and pieces of curriculum that are unique. Some you want an annual report because the Sugar Shack has this dimension of a business and has funding attached and grants and donations and all. So you receive an annual report, so you get kind of a financial snapshot and program snapshot. So I'm pleased to welcome Erin as the executive kind of overseer of that program, and I'll turn it over to her to present.
Thank you, Amber. Happy New Year, everyone. Nice to see you all. Thanks for having me tonight. I'm Erin LaPrade, the director of the Burrough. I'm very pleased to report that the Burrough program has continued to thrive this past year on both sides of our operations. On the classroom side of the house, our focus on growth and continuous improvement has led to several new opportunities for our students and the strengthening of our community partnerships. Likewise, the Burrough Sugar Shack, Learning Lab, and Candy Store continues to get bigger and better, demonstrating growth in sales and brand recognition, which in turn has created a new variety of meaningful opportunities for our students to engage with their community and practice a range of work and social skills. The program currently has 7 students, and with the support of our special ed teacher and transition specialist, Angelina McCarthy, 3 paraeducators, and our Sugar Shack job coach, they engage in a variety of life skills, social and vocational opportunities, across a range of locations on-site and in the community. We expect our numbers to settle at approximately 10 students in the coming year, taking into account students who will rise from the high school, and on the flip side, the students who will age out of the borough when they turn 22 in school year 24-25. The Sugar Shack is managed by Kristen Dada Wall, who is assisted by 4 part-time and/or seasonal retail associates, 3 of whom are former borough students. And we have also just added a part-time events coordinator to our staff, in addition that will allow the store to attend a greater number of events and pop-ups and significantly expand our sales footprint and overall brand exposure. This fall, the program added 2 new community internship sites to phase 2 of our vocational phase structure. And for context there, about 2 years ago, we developed these phases in order to give more of a formal structure to our vocational programming and to implement more efficient tools for evaluating student progress with regard to employability skills and IEP vocational goals. Phase 1, which is based in the Sugar Shack, is where students learn fundamental transferable employability skills. In phase 2, the students are able to then practice those skills learned in phase 1 in other workplace settings at community-based internships. And phase 3 introduces an individualized internship that will ideally lead to paid, naturally supported employment. Progress through these phases is entirely data-based, using the standardized diagnostic and assessment tool, the Massachusetts Work-Based Learning Plan, to inform our decision-making. In the last 2 years, we've had 4 students progress through all 3 phases to paid employment at age 22. The 2 new internship sites that we introduced this year are Curry Printing here in Westborough and Affordable Interior Systems, or AIS, Furniture in Leominster. The leadership and staff at both businesses go above and beyond to create dynamic learning experiences for our students in a highly inclusive work environment, and our phase 2 students have really been thriving at both locations. The structure of our vocational programming is just one of the unique attributes of the borough that tends to draw the attention of others. And as in past years, we continue to be approached by other school districts who wish to understand the backstory and the operations of the program in the Sugar Shack. These conversations can be fairly probing and time-consuming, so this year we decided to formalize our consulting services and create a fee structure. While the depth of conversation with other districts varies, having this formalized framework in place for the future will allow us to better facilitate those meetings, better protect our intellectual property, and potentially be compensated for our team's time if we feel it's justified. Despite the number of others who aim to replicate our programming, a primary objective of the borough continues to be securing tuition and referrals from other districts. We remain committed to being innovators with the aim of being the gold standard for transition programming, and we remain confident in our ability to attract out-of-district students. Going forward, we'll continue to research and develop strategies toward that end. Now turning to the Sugar Shack's performance over the last year, I've included a table with some sales data in your memo, and as you can see, for the fiscal year to date and calendar year 2023, sales and average order value again increased from the previous year. As we celebrate the 5th anniversary of our grand opening, the Sugar Shack continues to steadily grow our base of loyal customers while also attracting new customers who report being told, "You just have to go there. It's awesome. You have to go." We've seen an increase in corporate and custom orders, as well as an emerging trend of customers ordering from us because they'd received a Sugar Shack gift previously. We've become a partner of the Metro West Visitors Bureau, who gives us regular exposure on their website and social media channels. And we also have gained new followers thanks to our multiple nominations in this year's My FM Radio Quest for the Best, and from media profiles such as our recent It Happens Here spotlight on WBZ News. As word of our program, our mission, and our business spreads, it consistently proves to be a differentiator that attracts and retains customers and corporate clients. Specialty items such as our student-made fudge and gourmet truffles continue to be impressive sellers, even making it into the State House's holiday gifts exchange this year, thanks to Senator Michael Moore, which is pretty cool. Throughout December, we sold out of truffle boxes and pounds of fudge as quickly as we could make them, and numerous customers came into the store specifically to buy our fudge. Roughly half of our total sales for the year came from these specialty items. Clearly, they are a unique selling point that has become part of our identity, and we expect these items to continue to be strong performers in the future. This year, we were also able to upgrade our point of sale system and introduce a tablet-style register. Excuse me. This newfound mobility has allowed us to increase the number of pop-up shops and other off-site events that we were able to operate. Sales from these events have been impressive and have offset a slight reduction in general foot traffic that we receive in the store. As we continue to make progress toward our goal of being able to offset program costs through store sales, we're always looking to rationalize our product selections by examining SKU sales to determine what moves and what does not, and we're continually searching for waste and cost savings in our packaging and overall store operations. In the coming years, we expect continued growth in both the online and satellite channels with the implementation of a revamped e-commerce site that can handle a higher volume of orders, and with the addition of our events coordinator, who will research new off-site opportunities and allow us to sell in more places at once. We will continue to expand our gourmet inventory, including the possible addition of gelato, and will further develop our assortment of gift offerings. We will continue to work with the Westborough Economic Development Committee to implement new strategies to draw local customers to the store, and we'll attempt to mitigate persistent traffic and parking woes by raising awareness of our back parking lot. Corporate orders are steadily rising. In fact, we have 2 large ones already this month to fulfill, but we'll continue to leverage our membership in the Quarter 9 495 Chamber of Commerce to make new corporate connections, and we'll also continue to pursue opportunities for press coverage as we tend to see an increase in new customers following such exposure. Lastly, we're developing a business plan for the eventual addition of a Sugar Shack candy truck. This endeavor would further increase the reach of our products and mission, present event opportunities beyond what we're currently equipped to pursue, and based on our research into similar operations, substantially increase our sales. In closing, the Burrough program continues to be a cost-effective and values-centered program. Educating Westborough students in their community is a program value, and providing a high-quality program with cost-effective benefits is a district standard. With the average out-of-district cost at a collaborative being $74,000 and transportation averaging $25,000 to $30,000, the program remains cost-effective for the town while we contribute a viable downtown business to the community. Our dynamic programming and schedule, the expected increase in student numbers in future years, and the continued growth of production in the Burrough Sugar Shack has unveiled the urgent need for additional space. With the support and guidance of our landlord, Todd Alexander, we have begun exploring options for a basement renovation that would create supplemental education and conference flex space, as well as dedicated Sugar Shack production and storage space. Now, hand it over to Amber and Sherry to present some additional information about this project, but I don't know if it's possible to show it on the bottom of the memo. I have a very short reel of highlights from 2023 that our Sugar Shack manager put together for Instagram. It's about 1.5 minutes long. Is it possible to
Please do.
show that? Oh, no. There it is.
Don't think I can do
Yeah.
that.
Oh, there we go.
We can take a look at it
Maybe.
on our own, but
Okay, yeah.
Yeah,
And
it looks like it's going.
That's going.
There's some
So
music too, but
there's music to it?
sound.
Click.
Yeah. I have no idea how loud this will be. Let me just.
Yeah, it's
Down for a
fine,
sec.
yeah.
I could sing, but you probably don't want me to.
It's not working. I didn't know that you'd have sound. So you
all
can
right.
just
I
look
mean,
at the
that's nice.
visuals.
For those who haven't seen it, I put the link to the WBZ News segment as well.
I think as you watch this, what's important is to look, and the annual report that we want to provide you gives you a snapshot of how over the first 5 years, which is not a long time to have reached this depth of programming, you can see that now we're getting both quality and depth, and then expansion of the opportunities that we want to have for employment, and then also contribution and enhancement back to our own community. So it's such a double down on the opportunity to provide something in Westborough while we also have viable employment for our graduates and for our students as they progress through programming. I want to give a shout out as well, you have it in your memo, that we continue to receive donations to this program because people see its value. Currently, we are paying the student employees in their off-school work hours, and then now have hired several of the graduates who are working as paid employees, and that is currently carried through the donations for employment that were targeted by people who wanted to make sure they supplemented that for us. until the growth of the revenue reaches the point where we would be paying them from those profits. So as we look at the trajectory of that work, you can certainly see the depth of how much busier the store is, how much more product they're moving, and what kind of quality work experience students are getting. So I just have to say it's a good place to be 5 years in, and we've now reached that place where with this kind of traction and depth, the quality of the program's known well beyond Westborough. And so if you have questions for Erin or anything you want to ask her, I would let you do that first, and then Sherry and I will give you a brief first pass on the exploratory work we're doing on renovating the basement. Any questions for Erin?
Okay.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I have a question, but first I have a comment. I just want to applaud you for the wonderful work that you've done. This is quite an accomplishment in just 5 short years for the Burrough Sugar Shack program to come as far as it has. I know that there's been discussion in the past about profitability, about sales, and I have no concerns about that, seeing the numbers. I think the addition of the new signage out front is a nice balance, because it's not overdoing, because it's program first. It's not about sales. It's about the students in the program that's made available to them. And so, the accomplishments, like I said, are really impressive. I have a question about the number of students. Tuition in referrals would be wonderful, and I know that that's a projection. What would be an ideal number of tuition in referrals in addition to the students that are coming from within the district? So basically, what would be a top-end number for students in the program? Is that a Sherry question? Okay.
I was like, pull Sherry Stevens in. That's okay, then she'll be there at the table.
Well,
Good evening and Happy New Year. I appreciate the opportunity to be here as well, and just want to give a shout out to Erin and the Burrough team. They've just done an amazing job. So all of the challenges that we're facing are actually celebrations after being there 5 years. So great question, Steve. I think we've talked about comfortably the range of 12 to 14 students, and then we would increase staffing incrementally to meet that need. So I just want to say, when we talk about 10 next year, we're really aware, and we've done a good job targeting sort of the trajectory of students that will be coming and rising to the Burrough from the high school. But we've also been successful in bringing back a range of students from out of district placements. I think there have been 4 in the 5 years that were open. So that also, we view as a high level of success. So I think 12 to 14 would be really comfortable for the space as it stands.
And I would just add, I think there's opportunity too to bring students in that maybe just need vocational or just need social, and then we can maybe do sort of that a la carte sort of.
That's a good point, because we're also looking at sort of a tiered structure of services depending on what individualized students need. Maybe it's not the full program, so.
You kind of have to get to a place where you have a stability to open that next tier of vision. So to be at a place where we can see the flexibility of being able to offer families a range of, like you say, a la carte options, where they might just come in for vocational or just come into work or come in for the social opportunities, that feels good, and that makes it even a more uniquely based program. And again, it is for students and families in need, and so when we get that match, that's what families are looking for. They don't need all of this, they might need this, or they might need the whole package. So that feels good to have gotten to that place finally.
Sarah?
So part of what I had as a question, Steve answered, but thank you for all the work that you guys do. It's evident how much growth has happened here, even when I drive by what it was a couple years ago and what I see now, the activity and people kind of going in and out. It's really nice to see that. My question is around the team experience in terms of what you were talking about with referrals and being able to pass on your knowledge and experience to these other towns. I'm not sure what role, if any, you guys played with. I think it was Maple and Maine, which is a very similar model, I believe, right? But I'd like to hear about that, because I like the idea of being able to leverage this experience that you have and potentially, have the opportunity to maybe charge for it in the future, but I just wanted to see what your thoughts were around that. And then the second part of my question was going to be with respect to what Steve was saying about, I think you said the sweet spot is about like 10, 12 students. Is the expansion that's being proposed or the finishing of that floor going to help us in getting space for additional students, or is that just the storage and the other things that Amber was mentioning?
Sure. So do you want to take part one and I'll jump in around sort of your experience in working with other districts, and then I'll take the renovation.
Well, we definitely have the mentality that the more the merrier. I mean, we want to help these districts because, there's a need. And I think we just did reach the point where we said, we are putting a lot of time toward this, and we're protective of what we've created. We want to share, we want to help, but we were looking for ways to just kind of protect what we've created, and I think we're proud of the fact that we were the first, and so we're certainly happy to help to speak to these districts. And as I said, it's kind of a range of involvement. Some just have questions. Well, how did you get the business going, or how did you first come up with the idea? Very minimal questions that don't really require much of our time to assist, and we're happy to do that. But what we've done is just create a structure for if they really want to know from soup to nuts how we did it, then we can enter into that arrangement. And we're still, I think, discussing how we can, is it another sugar shack that maybe they're creating, or is it a what part of our name do they carry? So I think there's still some development that we can do as we have districts come to us, but I think it's such a huge compliment to the work that Amber and Sherry did to get this going, and then the amazing team that we have, and the work that we do, that we still, I've had districts from out of state call, having heard about us, so.
They want a franchise. I said no.
Well, yeah.
They want a franchise. I'm like, turn away, do not look. No, I think that having a consultant's fee, so they did set up a tiered consultant fee based upon help that's just general collegial help is a tier of just, we do that all the time, but that if somebody wants to access our stuff, see our planning, see our notes, look at our trajectory, and take time of Erin's substantially away from her program work, then it has to have a consultant fee attached to it that allows us to then plow that back into the program. So it's a good problem to have, but we've helped support several programs developing right around us, and it means that for the tier of programs where we might tuition in, we have other areas targeted, have not developed programs where they will see us as a viable option also for placing students. So it'll be interesting.
I would say we're very gracious and kind and open up until the point they tell us they want to sell candy, and then we kind of
We're like,
shut it
no.
down. Then we would want to consider the franchise opportunity. But it's been amazing. I would say there's multiple districts, and again, to Erin's point, out of state, and a lot of good inquiries, which is really, it's been a credit to the team and all that they've built there. So.
Yeah, just one more thing on that. I was going to say, it might be a nice opportunity to collaborate as far as, like your phase 2 that you guys were talking about, and internships for these to cross over with the other districts. So it's a pretty
That's a really
amazing.
good point. Yeah, thank you.
I keep wanting to have an independent accounting study to do our books. We haven't gotten there yet, but we definitely, the relationship work with the high school and opportunities for students to leverage that we have a business, to study business models, to do our accounting, to look at our marketing. We have a very viable business at this point where internship and training models that overlap back into the core curriculum work of the high school are attainable. I think we'll get that done if we specify it as a goal, lay it out, and fold it into the strategic planning. It sits out there as something we wanted to do but couldn't reach yet. I think it's the next tier of work. So, we have immensely capable high schoolers who could design some pretty cool stuff for our marketing work and our social media posting. If somebody wants to get good at that, we can provide it. So I think there's exciting things in the future that continue to add that depth.
Jakub, any comments, questions?
I just want to say I'm a big fan of your program, and it's fun to see Sugar Shack becoming more professional. the product look more professional than I remember the first year when it started. It's come a long way already, and I'm happy to see that it keeps growing. I don't have any concerns. They were already answered, so good work.
It's such a credit to our manager, Kristen. She just has a brilliant vision and really works hard to develop products that can maximize what our students are able to, their involvement. So, from labels to weighing to bagging to, product design, she really makes an effort to, design with them in mind.
I guess my comments would be this, from the beginning, because I've been on the school committee when this thing was just an idea. The original idea was a way to continue to provide services to the kids who needed this in the town of Westborough, rather than having to send them someplace else or not have any programs for them at all. Again, a reminder to the community that Westborough was first and had state laws changed in order to allow this system to happen in our school system, and the other communities who are benefiting from that effort are as a result of the effort that was done by the team for the borough. And so the blossoming of the program to be not only viable for training for the kids and provide them with an opportunity to have productive time while they remain in the school system, is also the fact that this program is becoming self-sustaining across the board. And so when we get into the next agenda item, all those in the hall in the town should realize the benefit of this request that's coming up, not only for the kids who are in the program, but the opportunity for others who may come forward. And then finally, to benefit the program in terms of expanded services and facilities. So again, having been here while this started way back when, I'm really proud of the town of Westborough to have fostered this particular program, which is beneficial for those children and young adults who really didn't have anything like this before. So again, thank you all for the effort that you put into this. And Amber, of course, gets certainly the kudos for having come up with this brainchild in the first instance with the help of other people in the program.
Yeah, well, thank you. That's so kind. Sherry's brainchild, my complimentary supportive legwork. So, and I think that that's what good partnership and teamwork looks like, in the synergy of a dynamic team. And so I also just believe it's important to compliment that Westborough remains a very unique and caring community, and a place where their values are firmly in place. And when we went to the town meeting and when we went to the community and we talked about the values of what it means to have equity for all and the opportunity for students who live in a community to receive high AP level coursework and the things they need to excel, and programming of the same high quality for students with learning unique challenges, the town stood up and agreed. And I think the benefits are there for us when we look at maintaining a community that recognizes those values. So I think a shout out to the lucky place we work. So thank you. We could transition, and Erin, I think, again, continues to do a great job, so we'll keep her at the table while we talk about this. So looking at, we knew when we took the space on that eventually that it would give us the opportunity to renovate the basement. We held on that until we came to a place, and Daniel, maybe you could, oh yeah, there we go. Can you open that? There we go. So we're just going to talk about preliminary discussions, which is working with our landlord. We would start to look at taking the same process we utilized before. We had to rent the space, and then the landlord renovated it and brought it up to the level of what we wanted it to be and amortized the cost of that across the lease. We've returned to our landlord, and as good tenants, have asked that we enter back into that same conversation to look at the development of the basement and amortize it across a longer lease, which would allow us to, spread that cost out, as well as before we agree to the investment of the cost of the increase in that rent as we amortize it out, we want to know that we have a long window of partnership with our landlord. So we've started some of that contract discussion, and again, I just want to give a shout out to Todd Alexander, who is just, again, longstanding community member who lives his values and is just an amazing landlord and a really good partner. He has started to then work on looking at renovating the space, and we will bring an update to you as soon as we have kind of plans for the length of the lease, how it would amortize, and what the stages would be. What we want you to see tonight is that thinking and what we gain. And the thing we gain, too, Sherry was saying, like, we've learned that, and in Aaron's work about having potential tuition in students, and then looking at some of the range of our own Westborough students, that having a space that gives us some downstairs flexibility, let us have a quieter, separate level of programming for students who need entry back into the high school, sometimes very small numbers of school phobic students, mental health concerns where they need a break in their programming designs that are related to space. And so we end up sometimes not having that space. This would give us that flex to have another quiet, high-end working space comparable to an area where you could receive tutoring, bridge back into the school, but then go over to the high school for programming, as an example, if you need those opportunities, and rebuild your educational model that could work with this flex space. Did I articulate that correctly?
You
wanna-
covered all my notes.
All right,
That's
go.
great.
Give the other
I
pieces,
think
yeah.
we're done, but no, that's so true, and I think as a first priority, we want to make sure that we are accommodating well the population that exists there and sort of the growth of the business itself. And we're sort of bumping into one another when it comes lunchtime to like move product that we're assembling for a corporate order. So, I think that the team has done a nice job thinking about the space, and this brings us to the thoughtful rendering that we have here about how to better utilize sort of, which is a large open space downstairs, and still have the opportunity to diversify if we can provide support to a population, with that demand.
So the space would bring a restroom to code for working for having wheelchair accessibility. You would have a dedicated workspace, that a BSS work area that would allow a large open space with storage and product layout, so that it wouldn't have to be up in the kitchen, because they're often doing, as Sherry said, like dual programming. And then downstairs, we also decided we would keep that smart board area. We've done some small construction work with students who want to develop construction skills or have aspirations to, like, we had a student who just started working at Lowe's who had kind of construction, building-oriented things. He did some building for us, gained some skills, and now works at Lowe's. So, you see this bridging work that she described in the 3 phases, and this gives us a space that lets us kind of do those pieces. But then you see the conference room that's soundproof. You've got space that's open for other types of programming, gives us that flex we're looking for. It has separate entrances and lets us, again, extend that programming window to what we're seeing in the needs of our student community. Sherry designed it again. Like, she goes through this stuff. She has a picture of what she wants, and we do the mechanics to make it happen. You got your program people here, and we're the workers that get it done. So in that trajectory, I'll continue working with Sherry to meet with Todd as his people design. We'll get pricing, we'll get plan, and then because that relates to contract work, we'll do a piece of that in executive session to discuss details and then map it out with you. So as soon as that timetable develops, I'll share it in an update, and we'll get a trajectory to kind of figure out where we are for moving forward on that.
Could you include within that response cost benefit?
Sure.
This is a little different than a normal cost benefit approach, but one of the benefits, of course, is the benefit to the kids. and there, you can put a dollar value on that, if you will, so that, it then, when you've done that, becomes a normal cost-benefit analysis.
All right, we can work on that, definitely.
It'll help us negotiate, I think, as well.
Yeah, yeah, okay. Thank you. So again, like I said, we come to this place in the year where we've been holding pieces. We want to put new ideas in front of you, having done the budget work, so you're getting some big pieces to start to think about. So this is first pass, Burrough, downstairs, time and planning, and we'll stage it back to you leading towards final decisions, okay?
Very good.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for your time, both.
And you are almost right on time. We're off 2 minutes, not bad. All right, turn it back to you.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is citizens' requests. Kristen, I think you want to make a statement before we start.
Yeah, well, first I'll read the policy, just to remind everybody. We have a policy about citizens' requests, and the important parts of that policy state that you must be a current resident of Westborough. Speakers can address the school committee about issues within the school committee's purview and authority. Our policy also states that the public comment segment shall not exceed 15 minutes, but in the past we've been flexible with that. Each speaker will be allowed up to 3 minutes to speak to the school committee. Written comments longer than 3 minutes may be presented to the presiding chair before or after the meeting, and you're welcome to hand the chair additional comments in writing now or send them through email, and the chair will make sure they are shared with other school committee members. All speakers are encouraged to present their remarks in a respectful manner. Public comment by residents at this meeting is not a discussion, debate, or dialogue between individuals and the school committee. It's an individual's opportunity to express an opinion on issues within the school committee's authority. Our role is to listen carefully to what you have to share with us. Clapping, cheering, calling out, or any other noise during or following a speaker is not allowed. And at the close of citizens' request, school administrators may address what was shared by the speakers if they wish to do so. Additional individual follow-up with a speaker may take place in the days and weeks following a school committee meeting. Do you want to see who is interested in speaking?
So those who would like to speak, please raise your hand. Okay, the normal policy is that we go from my left to right, front row to back, and so that would be the order of how you get called. Boyd?
Mr. Conklin, just before you speak, you had emailed your remarks to the school committee this afternoon, and I just want to be on record saying, much like the remarks that you made at our last meeting, these have nothing to do with the teaching and learning in the Westborough Public Schools. Your remarks have nothing to do with the school department budget, school district policy, or the superintendent. These remarks have no connection nor implication to the work of this committee or the district. I want to be on public record that I see these remarks as an abuse of our citizens' request public speak policy.
You have 3 minutes.
Boyd Conklin, 8 Water Street. Hello, groomers. Remove the LGBT iconography in the schools. It is not allowed in all other town buildings. Quit promoting in schools. It is the only groups that are promoted. This is a social contagion with this trans business, and you are causing more of it by advertising everywhere in the schools. Stop it. Electric buses is on the agenda today. What a disaster. Twice the cost and half the reliability. Death trap on explosion. Subsidies and virtue signaling are the only drivers of these electric buses. These companies are going out of business all the time, a lot of them this month. I would say what Claudine Gay would say, to have doubt cast on my commitments to confronting hate and to upholding scholarly rigor, 2 bedrock values that are fundamental to who I am, both me and Colleen there, Claudine. Absurdity will reign. Team diversity and equity and inclusion will have to keep adopting more and more preposterous positions to try to maintain hegemony. So, as Kristen mentioned, this has nothing to do with the school committee. She says, trans regretters, phalloplasty, critical analysis of trans bottom surgery, which is what, if you're promoting the trans thing throughout the school, you're promoting this. This is the way I look at it. So I'm trying to get you to stop it. You may not find it relevant, but I do. Trans man Scott Nugent, and he's the guy behind this What is a Woman thing out there, the documentary. Follow a critical analysis of trans bottom surgery and its complications. Voices within this debate are few, and sure they remain. Phalloplasty, colloquially known as trans man bottom surgery, represents an integral part of the transgender surgical transition. This unique surgical procedure involves creating an artificial penis, commonly nicknamed pseudopenis, using skin usually retrieved from the patient's arm. While some online platforms issue sparse advisories regarding phalloplasty, overarching medical literature and online deliberations seldom present a genuinely realistic depiction of this surgical procedure.
Your 3 minutes are up, sir.
Thank you. Happy New Year.
Beth Serber, 1 Denny Street. This is about 5th grade sex education, mainly the puberty discussion. I fundamentally disagree with mixed gender puberty lessons for 5th grade students. I believe your methodology is ineffective and counterproductive. It eliminates a gender-specific forum to discuss gender-specific topics. Outside of its ineffectiveness, I feel that this is an initial stage in normalizing the gender ideology prevalent in sex education curriculums. The shift to mixed gender puberty lessons occurred 3 years ago. The only indication from the administration that I've received regarding this justification was that the decision was made because it kept in line with other schools and their teaching methodologies, rather than an independent justification as to why Westborough selected this method. As I now have a 5th grade child, this is the first that I've become aware of the shift. I have discussed this topic with other parents who have inquired about the shift as well. They informed me that they previously received responses that it was to generate empathy between the sexes. My child does not need a boy to empathize with her ovulation cycle. My child and other girls need a puberty lesson absent boys to discuss the physical changes of their female body. Girls need to feel comfortable asking questions regarding their changing bodies. What possible harm could come from providing 10 and 11-year-old female students gender-specific instruction in a private setting? Are female students not allowed any level of compassion? Would any female member of the board have felt comfortable at 10 years old to ask, what do I do if I get my period in school? Can I go to the nurse? Can I leave the classroom? Do you have anything in the office that could help me? Can I call my mom? Would you have felt comfortable at 10 years old asking that question in front of your male peers? As an adult female, I'm sure you can think of many topics you would prefer not to discuss in front of males. You would appreciate privacy and a sense of safety, the camaraderie that comes from female companionship. I'm simply asking that we extend that same courtesy to our girls. Something to consider. That's it. Thank you.
Hello, Susan Reynolds, 50 Upton Road. This is just a follow-up regarding some of the budget questions I had a while back. And as the budget update continues, to me, there was a gap in some information. So I've been doing some research myself. And mainly, I've recently gotten more involved because I'm just trying to see what the differences are of the last 5 years that I see around town, and I'm hearing from other parents, even though I do not have children in the school. But there's a lot about gender and sex, and there's a lot about diversity and inclusion. So I'm trying to figure out the money. I'm trying to follow some of the money to see how the schools have changed. So the grant money, if when it's presented, it is presented as staff positions that are going to be funded with this $2.8 million for 2024. What it doesn't present is where did the grant money come from? And with most grant money, there's usually some stipulations with grant money in terms of what it's used for. So I did my mass.gov and did a little homework and found 6 grants that come up to 1.2 million dollars. The bulk of it, say 3/4 of it, goes to Individuals with Disability Education Act, which is fabulous. And then there's also some for academic achievement for English learners and immigrant children and youth, which we may need more of in the go forward based on the more immigrant children that we have coming to the town. That was actually a lower amount, $64,000. Disability was $968,000. But there is a Title I, II, III, and IV, which is about, it's called Every Student Succeeds Activities. And it's about improving basic programs operated by local school districts. So that's Title I, supporting effective instruction. And then there was one on student support. So it was just interesting to look at some of the resources. There was some anti-racism resources. There was definitely some DESE resources, ESSA resources, and some of that went down the gender track and the diversity, equity, inclusion. So, I was able to see some background there, and there's so much available on the internet. So but in applying for these grants, there's just some expectation. They did talk about ESSA requires family and community engagement activities, and that there's a written family engagement policy. Perhaps there is one in our town in order to be able to get these grants, but I don't know of it. I can follow up with an email to Amber because I'd be interested in seeing what this family and community engagement activity is. So I'd be interested in seeing in future budget presentations what the funds are that they come from. They all had codes. I was able to, so much available on the internet, I was able to follow those codes, and I'd be very interested in seeing more information about where that gap in money is, because I came up with 1.2, but we're talking about 2.8 for next year. So like one of the equity resource clearinghouses.
Your 3 minutes are up.
Is it? Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you. Would the staff like to comment?
Sorry, I was just saying, let's make a plan. I would say that Anita would be very happy to sit down with Susan and go through the grants and the allocations. I mean, some of the grants layer over multiple years, and our targeted, Daniel does the title grants, Sherry does the IDEA grant, and the ESSER grant that you referenced. That money actually was COVID-related and is starting to cycle out. We have past memos on what all those expenditures were. Happy to share all of that. So you can make an appointment with us. If you want to email me or call or touch base, we can set you up. I acknowledge Beth's comments and know that I'd be happy to have further discussion around that. And I think we have provided, and I think there is a wider discussion for the inclusion of both boys and girls being together for the puberty instructional lessons. That is a practice that again, we exchanged some email about it, and I'm happy to continue to talk about it and sit down. I mean, I explained that too. I oversaw that instruction when I was in Wellesley, and that's a long time ago. And they were shared lessons because we wanted to normalize and not mystify body development, and that there was a lot of discussion around the fact that in the development of self, that as boys and girls develop, we all become mysteries to each other, and that can create anxiety and stigma and a sense of needing to hide sexuality. And the goal of putting students together is that it's not secretive and that actually it's a natural human bodily function to develop. And so normalizing that is a way that we build confidence that you shouldn't have to hide when you have your period if you need to go to the nurse. You should feel comfortable that if you are a boy, we talked a lot about girls, but boys have a whole sexual development as well and often require the same kind of consult and support that women do. So we normalize it, we get comfortable talking about it, and the goal is that then you have adults that are comfortable, you can seek out for help. So there's a rationale for that process. We do make the nurse available for private conversation. That's very explicit, that if they want to have a follow-up conversation, they can ask to meet with the nurse privately to ask their private questions. We make that available to all fifth grade students in the trajectory of the shared lessons because some people want to have private conversation. We also have heard and we respect that parents want to have those follow-up private conversations. So we let our families know when those lessons are being taught. We make those lessons available so that families can do that legwork of those private conversations. And there's a respectful purpose and boundary to that there are people that want to have more in-depth conversations or not. So again, I think the development of that unit is educationally sound, and I recognize that people have different feelings about it. In response to that, we have built-in variability for it. A family can choose to opt out. Families sometimes opt out of one or two of lessons, or they say, I would like my child to meet with the nurse. Or, so we do meet with people and work with that group of families that are in that trajectory of fifth grade experience. We look at how many families opt out, we look at how many families had questions, and we use that data to ask ourselves, is this meeting most of our families' needs? So, for example, I think we had 4 families that opted their students out this year, and we had, I think, several questions and people that wanted to come in and meet with the teacher or meet with Peter to look at the curriculum, and I can't remember how many he had this year. But we look at that data and we say, out of the hundreds of fifth grade students and families over a trajectory of multiple years, we have made modifications for those families that need those differences. So, that is what good, solid public schooling looks like. And we are always going to have people that have a variety of feelings. I feel that Westborough is providing a sound model. We also did reiterate at the last meeting, I think Beth brought a good question about whether or not Westborough would be fully adopting the new national standards or the state standards that had just been reviewed. And I heard Daniel echo and was clear that Westborough will make our own selective choices as we review that curriculum and we'll make it available. Like, we want to be in relationships with family. I respect the questions and the discussion. So I thank you for bringing it forward. And, we remain open to working with families on what their needs are against their values. All right, so
I have
hopefully that,
one comment, I guess,
Sure.
rather than a question, and that is, given the space in the school, is it possible from time to time to separate the girls from the boys to have a private meeting such as what was discussed?
I think
There may be some merit in that consideration.
Sure. I think we're, again, as we work with the curriculum, people teaching that work, and it's taught within a health curriculum framework now, where they are getting that skilled intervention to do that work and work with students and then teachers, they do follow up lessons. So, that's a discussion to have with Roger and Peter and the team and see what's workable in how they're doing the lessons. So,
I guess I'd just add, we're talking about 1 or 2 lessons out of, that's it in 5th grade. It's like, what is puberty? This is what your parent, we encourage parents to have the discussion. It seemed artificial to make it, and this is where most school districts at this point are, is like to all of a sudden take the one topic and say, this is the one topic we're not going to talk about with boys and girls together. We're
I'm
going
not
to
suggesting
separate
that.
them.
I'm just saying that there certainly would be questions that could be asked, you know, with a classroom that's same sex versus not. I certainly would think at that age that there is some reticence to that general discussion of quote sex. So I'm just saying that I don't find the comment out of order to say maybe there is an opportunity somewhere by virtue of enough classroom space to split it for the same schedule. And once in a while, do that.
Yeah, I think the way that they, and again, like, we are always looking at how we present those pieces. The way that they wanted to handle that was teach the 2 lessons and then ask students to be able to submit their individual questions if they wanted to have them privately answered. We were providing one-to-one opportunities for students to have that private time.
I understand that's there,
And,
but,
you know, yeah,
but this general point, I think, should be considered as important for the kids,
yeah.
and see what you do about it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else want to comment?
Can I just
Well,
comment on
okay,
that?
Sarah,
Do
go
you
ahead.
So I was going to say that I also think, though, that the opt-out option is on the table. I know that I had opted out one of my kids for one of the classes because I was concerned at the time, and I was given the option of having them have a separate research project that they could do on their own, and in that way, I was able to control the information that I wanted to share. So I think that that's always an option that they've provided you, where if you choose that that's how you want to, you know, control the information that's being given, that is a viable option that it's being presented, so.
Not a,
No, but thanks for your comments.
that's good. Just follow up with email. That'd be great. Thank you. All right.
Okay, next item on the agenda is the quarterly budget update.
Well, I just wanted to start with a little drum roll celebration that Anita, I have my table mate back, and that Anita is now making progress and is here with us, so that's a celebration. One of the things we wanted to do was provide a quarterly, you know, report and a more systematic kind of introduction of implementation of the annual budget for you to create a record, and so I'm going to turn it over to Anita and let her present. I'll give that to you.
That's fine, thank you. Excellent. Hello. If you could scroll up a little bit so that we can see the chart that's on the bottom. That's perfect. Excellent, thank you. So at this point of the school year, we're in a very good financial standing, considering we are almost halfway through the school year. Each and every week, my office goes through all of our encumbrances, and we try to liquidate any POs just to free up any money that we need. At this point in time, we are anticipating that technology, finance, curriculum, athletics, and school committee will be expending their appropriations in total. With our 6 school buildings, we're expecting about $130,000 of surplus monies that we're going to kind of offset any potential deficits we have at the end of the fiscal year. In comparison, last year at the end of the fiscal year, they had about $100,000 in surplus that was laying around for them for the 6 school buildings. You can see on the chart that there's about a little over $1 million in salary deficit, and that is due to the contract settlements that were unfunded at the end of last year, but the budget was already approved for FY24. And then our buildings and grounds department right now, we are about $289,000 projected to be in the deficit, and that is without us not transferring the $200,000 from community education that we'll be transferring if we need to transfer it come the end of the year. And I think that's about it, right?
Yeah, I would say, you know, we've talked about the salary deficit, and I would say that we typically, at the end of the year, when schools, if they have expenditures they have not made from their budget, we will utilize that to leverage for a prepay to special education costs to keep that stabilization fund in place. I am hopeful that we will have funds available to do some prepay because we're not carrying that 400,000 that we talked about in next year's budget for tuition allocations that are unanticipated. This year, you can see that we basically strategically are leveraging some of those funds being pulled now from schools to make sure we have the coverage of the salary offset. And the 800, that $1 million, you see the sped offset of 800,000, that's the circuit breaker offset, and that will be utilized. That's where you get the coverage for the vast majority of that budget salary deficit. So this is very typical budgeting for this stage in the year. Typically, as tuitions are applied against the budget first and then circuit breaker, those allocations kick back into salary offsets at the end of the year. As an example, we're doing it now up front early. So you can see that the vast majority of that salary deficit is being offset by the circuit breaker allocation that will cover tuitions, and then those funds will reallocate across to cover the salary. And then the funds that she said, we're pulling back early. Facilities has a lot of money encumbered, and you see those total encumbrances, that 1.6 million. Typically, we'll have some of that would fall back after they do expenditures to offset that 289. So we track it, and then, as Anita said, she keeps pulling back purchase orders in a rotational monthly cycle if they don't have expenditures made within them, so we can keep this cycle tight and make sure that we're tracking for you. This looks very typical to me in terms of the 304,000 at the bottom line right now for this stage of the year. So questions, highlights? I like this report format. It's new, so we'll play with it a little bit for you. I think you should look at, does it give you the information you want? And then we'll develop it with you into the next one and the next one. You'll kind of see the burn rate on these salary schedule areas, and we'll just keep you updated.
As you probably all know, Massachusetts is one of the states in the union that does not allow communities to deficit spend. The purpose of this report is to let us know where we think we are. The purpose is for us now to prepare methodology by which we can come up with a balanced budget. As was mentioned, although we have encumbered totals, if the monies are not spent or if we do not execute something that's outstanding, such as, purchasing something that we can delay or push into the future year, and generally that is how the school department has balanced budgets in the past. So this, I guess we could call it the second quarter, even though it's the first one, is the means by which the school committee and the school administration is able to manage the process by which we come up with a balanced budget at the end of the year. Historically, we have returned money to the town, which when that happens, it goes into the general fund. But again, it's a tool by which we manage what happens on the money side of the budget. Anybody have any comments other than that? So it's a tool, and it allows us to work forward to come up with what we need to delay spending on things that we can, so that we can balance the budget.
And you'll get these same departments will roll forward, so you can look at that kind of burn rate on and then how their encumbrances end up by the end of the year. And we'll put in the table of, the verbiage, kind of our projection on it and any hot spots we want to call out. I also think, as you look at getting these numbers, we'll do this, I think you should add this report, probably October would be when you would do it. When would you do the first one next year? October, then January, so you get them, and then we'll move towards close of budget. And I also think that for people that like to study the money, I direct them to the end of year report that we submit, because it's comprehensive to how every line item in the budget closes out. And so I know you guys know that, and we provide that report to you, but it's nice as you layer in to get some comparisons. If you look at that end of year report, then you look at our progress on budget, you kind of learn a rhythm for how it all ends up at the end of the year.
Very good. If no one has any other comments on this, we can move on.
All right.
Very good. I think the next item is the Aquifer catch basin upgrades. Chris, are you going to speak to it?
So yeah, so we actually have people with us, so thank you. I feel badly, I should have confirmed with you, so thank you for being here. I didn't even give you a target time, so welcome. So I'll turn it over, so the document that was, you want to come on up too? Come on up, we can have a little gang. We provided the Fuss and O'Neill outline and an opportunity for them to kind of pre-read. And I explained that you're working towards this grant potential. And I guess I would turn it back to the chair to see how you want to proceed, if you would like them to share kind of the overview of where it is, and for the school committee to start to kind of participate in the process.
Yeah, if you could speak to the general headings that are in the, in your memo, I think that would be fine. Particularly, I guess, the background and where particularly you plan to ask us for approval.
Yep. So Chris Pant, Director of Public Works here. This is Joe Bucadoro. He's our Assistant Town Engineer. So big picture, this is part of a bigger project looking at how we can potentially take water that's coming from various places, including stormwater, and put it back into the ground here in Westborough. Looking at a whole bunch of sites across the town, but there are 3 schools with the potential where we could have make some of that happen. So some opportunity to put some water back in the ground, some stormwater. So that's why we're here tonight. So basically, ultimately what we want to get out tonight is we're asking to go to these specific schools, which I'll talk about, and dig 7 holes that are probably the size of this table and about 5 feet deep. It takes us about an hour to do each hole. So this will happen over the course of a couple days that we'll schedule with the schools, and then fill the holes back in, make it basically look like it was before we were ever there, and that's it. That's what we need to ultimately do for this. That data that we collect from those test pits feeds into a report that's going to look town-wide at these sites that we've selected, that says these are potential places where in the future, if we want to, if we have approval to, if we can fund it, and all those other things that are associated with doing projects, potentially build something that would allow us to infiltrate water into the ground. So for example is at the high school. It's one of our biggest properties in the town that has runoff, so it's got a big parking lot, it's got a big roof, tennis courts, other things. So a lot of water there that's in some cases already being infiltrated, but there's opportunities where we could divert some of that water that's being pushed off the site into surface waters and then eventually making its way to the Cedar Swamp and going out of town. We could take some of that water, collect it on the site, and infiltrate it directly into the ground, at a particular site on the school, right? And so all of that has to be figured out. All we're doing right now is just seeing the possibilities. Where are these options available? And so we took a big list of dozens and dozens of sites all over the town, narrowed that down to a smaller list. We have several other sites outside of schools, but we've got 3 sites. So the high school, and I think if you scroll down, there's maps in here.
Yeah.
Thank you. So the high school, you can see on the left side of the screen, that's the entrance to the high school. So those 2 red dots represent the general locations of where the 2 holes, so that's 2 holes right there, those 2 dots. Again, so we go in there, we know it's where people potentially walk, and it's the front of the school and needs to look nice. So again, we'd go in there, dig these holes, fill them back in, make sure it looks exactly the way it looks like now. So that's at the high school. This is Gibbons and Armstrong. So actually those sites are in existing drainage structures already. That the reason we selected these as potential sites is because there's options, we think, to improve those existing structures that are there now. So those are drainage basins already, water going there already. We're just looking at how could we maybe make those sites better than they are already, right? So again, 2 holes there. And then the last site is Hastings.
Sorry, I just shifted over, I think.
So there's a couple of sites at Hastings. So 3 sites there, 1 in the very back, and then 1 on each side. Again, 3 more holes. We'd go in there. We understand there's infrastructure there. We know about the wells and other things we have to pay attention to be careful. But the summary is we're going to go and dig some holes and get some information, right? So that's the, we can certainly talk more details, but that's the gist of what we're talking about.
Yeah, and I think at this point, it's clear what the proposal is, but, you know, there's 3 things in my mind. First of all, for example, at Hastings, the water table's only a couple of feet below the grade. And so the practicality of what's being suggested, in my mind, has some limits. The 2 dots on the right side of this particular feature are near the runoff into the swamp. And in fact, anything that falls on that area is already being infiltrated because the grade is almost 0. And secondly, the red dot at the top of the screen is generally in the area where the pipes that come out of the geothermal wells exist. And there's a tremendous risk for us as members of the school committee in damaging that system. And so, you know, my own thought is that I think for me to vote in favor of anything is to understand more about what the program would be and what the quote infiltration system would be, rather than, you know, the quote harmless holes that are being suggested for test pits. If you go back to Gibbons and Armstrong, if you could go up 1 slot. These 2, as Chris said, they are existing retention basins. And the control for the upper one is the amount of water that's let out underneath Fisher Street by virtue of the culvert. And so to the extent that one wants to, let's say, increase the ability to infiltrate, obviously gauge the water release. You know, historically in this town, when I was on the planning board, which is almost 40 years ago, the rule that we had created at the time was no increase in rate of runoff. That is, we would store it and discharge it at the same rate as historically it had been. Now the idea, and as we learned at the failed school, is to infiltrate 100% of the increase in runoff. So it fails, we have a gigantic system underground. When we remodeled the high school, we put a gigantic infiltration system underground. And so if we go now to the high school spots, yep. The spot that's lowest in this picture is at the high ground of the high school. The spot that's up towards West Main Street is actually adjacent to the stream. And so the logic of having chosen those 2 in terms of any ability, I guess, to infiltrate, which is also how big a system like this needs to be, in terms of even what the design of it would be. We have built in the past for the schools were underground chambers. That's what you're thinking of in these 2 places, but that lower spot is on the high ground, so where's the water going to come from that you're going to infiltrate? Are you going to pump it out of the brook? So, I mean, those are questions that, in my mind, need to be answered before I would vote to do anything to any of these projects without knowing what the impact is, the design, whether there's a safety issue in terms of what's being installed, whether there's a maintenance issue that the school department will have to pay for. What is the benefit other than the statement that in fact we're infiltrating water? I think on the school properties, we've already done a big job. Now to suffer again by virtue of things that in my mind have marginal benefit just based on where they're located. So what I would offer is an opportunity to have, to have another meeting with, with Fuss and O'Neill to tell us, what we might anticipate would be built in these places, so that in fact, I think not only myself, but the rest of the school committee could try to understand whether there's a future impact that's now on the shoulders of the school department to deal with and maintain. Those are my thoughts. Anybody else? So again,
Well, I guess my comment, unless there's another question, I'll respond to that.
Well, I just support your suggestion to postpone the vote, given your concerns, unless you have a response to everything that Steve brought up.
Yeah, I guess my point in saying up front that this is a feasibility study is that I have no idea if those sites are even going to work for other reasons beyond the reasons you just said. So that's why we're doing this. For other reasons, we may decide those don't make sense. So
we will decide. It's the town's, school committees are authorized to operate
yeah,
on
I got
this
it.
land.
I understand that's why we're here, is to get your permission. I'm just telling you, all we're asking to do is dig 7 holes.
Well, let's say we did, and let's say that in fact it came out to be positive from the perspective of the study that you guys have been dealing with. Are we obligated to say we're going to allow you to do it?
No.
Even if there's an impact to us?
No.
What do you need to know about the existing infiltration basins, other than that that's what they were built for?
Well, that's not accurate. Those are not infiltration basins that exist there now.
Well, I know that's where the water goes, and in fact, particularly at Gibbons and Armstrong, goes into those 2 retention basins, which have been the consistent design of the town for almost 50 years.
So we have other sites around the town we've already done test pits at. I'm totally comfortable moving forward with those sites and just, not doing the schools.
Well,
It's a good
let me ask this
suggestion
question,
that
Chris.
was offered by the engineer we're working with.
Let
and
me
it-
ask this question.
Yeah.
What are you going to put in the ground? Is it going to be an open pit? Is it going to be a structure underground? We don't know anything.
If you scroll up, can you scroll up to the pictures? So I don't know if it's going to be this or not, but these are examples of the types of infrastructure that could be potentially installed at locations. We're not talking large-scale things. I understand what's at the high school now. We're not necessarily talking about large underground infiltration. We're talking about something that is on the level of this, which basically just allows the water to go into the ground versus sending it somewhere else.
So why is not a grass field equivalent to these things?
What's that?
Why is not a grass field equivalent to these things?
A grass field is, but all the runoff from the high school right now is not going to a grass field. It's going to.
I want you to look at the design of the high school remodeling and how big that retention area is. It drains everything from the high ground.
I'm not here to debate the engineering, Steve.
Well,
I know what happens at the high school. I understand the system there. I'm just suggesting through engineers that do this for a living, that are stormwater consultants, that said, hey, these are potential sites. If you don't agree with it, that's fine. We'll move somewhere else. I don't know what it's going to be. I'm just saying.
Well, neither do we. And to the extent that this discussion is the first discussion for this committee to react to this, perhaps additional information from Fuss and O'Neill, who I know are good engineers. I've worked with them before. I would like to know what they would envision at these sites. Because the soil in Westborough, as you know, is terrible. There's no gravel on these sites. And I know that. It's till, it's very fine clayish material, and it doesn't infiltrate. And we know that from the work that we've done at least at 3 schools. So, just because you have a grant, it doesn't mean that we should suffer the process by which you
I'm not
end up
suggesting that at all, and I don't know what you're suffering. I'm not clear what you're saying, the school.
Who's going to maintain these things?
We don't even know if we're going to do anything
Well,
there.
isn't that something that we should know?
Yeah, if we were going to build something, but right now we're looking at the feasibility. You just said it's not feasible. So
My belief.
that's your belief. I want to see if that's true. If that's true, then we wouldn't build anything. If it's not true, then we would decide what we
Who's
could
the
build
we?
there.
You might offer to
The
build something.
town would decide, Steve, and we'd get your permission to do it if that's what we wanted to do. I understand the hierarchy and who gets to approve at the end of the day.
This is not a hierarchy issue. This is what makes common sense.
Okay, well, it makes common sense to me to dig a hole, see if there's the potential to put something there. If not, we don't do it. If you don't want to do it at the schools, that's fine. I'm going to go somewhere else. We already have. We're just going off a recommendation that said, out of the 100 possibilities in the town of Westborough, these are some good sites to do this.
Well,
And-
that's really my first question, is why did you make the determination that the sites that are chosen are good sites?
Well, at the high school, for example, despite the fact that there's a infiltration in the backside of the high school, all the runoff from the front is going into pipes that are leading it away from the town, ultimately. It's going to Cedar Swamp, then going out of town in the Sudbury River.
And why do
So
you
we can
think,
capture that water.
why do you think going to Cedar Swamp is a bad thing?
I'm not saying it is.
Well, the logic of what's going on in my mind is a little silly. But anyway,
Ask one more question.
Yeah, go ahead.
How many holes do you anticipate in the entire town?
Do you know off the top of your head?
Specific number, but there's
Like just the order of magnitude.
dozen, maybe test pits that are being done.
how many did you
How
say?
many? 2,000 or 3,000?
Dozen
2,000 or 3,000. Okay, thank you.
for stormwater installations, and I think Chris touched on too, that we're looking at sites to discharge treated wastewater effluent. Collectively, for all of the sites that we're looking at, it's 2 or 3.
Well, I would prefer, rather than dig a hole with a backhoe, is to use a split spoon sampler and get your information from that.
What piece of equipment did you say?
It's a boring,
Oh,
pushing it into the ground.
yeah.
That means you got a hole that big, and as long as you've done analysis to know that we're not cutting a pipe or electricity or cables or any of the other stuff that you might run into, which, by the way, the front yard of the school is full of stuff, particularly in that upper plateau. So,
Could I ask it? One more question. It's probably naive, but if you're saying that the water is going into those pipes and then leading to the swamp, can you catch that water from that point if it's already in the pipes? Or-
So when I say that, I'm generalizing, right? I mean, we're talking about 20 square miles of things that are happening. But yes, there's potential to get that water in other places, in other ways, and we're looking at those options. But it's also about, as Steve mentioned, the type of soil that exists and whether that water actually. So the purpose of this pit is to see if the water actually will infiltrate the ground versus be diverted by rock or something else that might prevent the water from going in the ground, so it's not doing what we want it to do. So the analysis that's been done up to this point, which is purely off maps and just information that's available electronically, is to say, where could we potentially put a structure, maybe something like that, that would capture water and allow that water to go actually into the ground to an aquifer. And that doesn't, as Steve has already said, that doesn't exist everywhere for a variety of reasons. And so these sites that we've located, not just the ones at the school, but the other locations we have, are sites that are, there's other factors that go into, right? It could be who owns the property. So there's lots of sites that are private sites that we don't own, that we don't have permission to go on. So we could spend 6 months trying to get permission to do that, or we could just do it on a town piece of property, which is our approach. So besides is the soil condition good? Besides what's the impact to the specific site, and is it, does it need to look nice or whatever else? There's other things in terms of who owns it, and is it practical to get stormwater there? So we have to, again, Steve said it, the water doesn't just flow there naturally. We're directing the water there. And in this case, we would be directing it probably from the roof of this high school to that location. Not all of the water from the high school roof, because that's a lot, but some amount that lends itself to whatever that location could basically process. And that's what we would do at other sites as well. So it's got to be a site where you're actually going to get some volume that you can then inject into the ground, essentially. Otherwise, you're kind of doing what Steve said, which is just, it's a grass field and you're just collecting rainwater, but it's not concentrated, and that's what we're trying to do, is concentrate it.
Thank you.
So I think for me, part of it is that I feel as though I'm missing something. Probably I would defer to Steve because of his experience with this and specifically with hydraulics. But my question is a concern because we have in this report that they've provided us potential ideas for what it would look like, at least on the surface. I mean, I'm not aware of what.
This is what his suggestion would be, the outcome, which is, some kind of garden or some kind of pit or whatever. I mean, I would never approve a pit because that's a safety issue in any of these locations. The ones at Hastings are in the middle of a ball field. 2 of them are, or next to.
Yeah, the one, Gibbons, I think as you look at, I appreciate the quality of discussion.
But Gibbons and Armstrong already, those 2 spots are in the existing
Right, no,
drainage
I
basin.
understand that.
And to me, it's silly to want to spend any money to do anything to those. They do the job they're supposed to do. So,
They're not doing what we're trying to do.
well, maybe it'd be nice for somebody to come in and say, okay, what's the rationale behind these places and what we're trying to do? We've already done it on school property. We've already created the opportunity for water to infiltrate, and we spent a lot of money to do it.
But there's more opportunity, is all I'm saying.
Well, I don't agree with
So
you.
you did a lot. I appreciate that, but there's more opportunity.
Well, certainly at Hastings, it's the middle of a ball field of multiple acres that's flat. So the water doesn't run off, it infiltrates. So wanting to build a pit to infiltrate in the same place it's already infiltrating doesn't make any sense. And if these guys came forward, I would say, why did you pick that place? Did you ever go there? Did they see what the grade is? Well, then there's something wrong with their decision, because the only water that gets on that field is water that comes from the sky and it's not collected anywhere. And so the
Can I
runoff.
can I
the
ask
purpose
a
of
point
the
of
re-
clarification here? I mean, I thought, my understanding was the Aquifer project was to capture rainwater that then could be used by the town, that is now going down the Assabet, and we're losing it, and so that, I thought that was what you were.
Well,
and so
that's
there
what's
was-
been said. The aquifer has nothing to do with what we're talking about. The aquifer comes from and goes to, from west to east on a diagonal from Hakamaka Pond towards the Assabet River. And in fact, that's been proved in 50 years worth of borings and water tests.
So isn't it to capture more of the water than we're currently capturing, so that we're losing water into the Assabet? Is that the purpose?
Our wells are not going to get any of this water in these locations. It's not there.
I have participated in listening. I think for me, and again, you own these decisions, I feel like there's a range, and I said this to Chris when I saw the document and we had the initial conversation to ask to bring it forward to begin a conversation, that I had respect for process, that they're learning something that I know nothing about, and within that range, I respected the engineering and the grant and the proposal. There are two areas that they wanted to dig that I questioned just because of the complexity of having to deal with. One, like the one at the front of the high school, you know, I kind of have like a reaction to, because it's the front of the high school, and, you know, it's going to be an eyesore to dig a big pit there potentially. So I just had questions about that, and I said I would pose those when you brought them forward. And digging out in front of the swing set at Hastings felt like, I know those little feet are going to be running back and forth over that. Not my two preferences. I respect the quality of what you guys are discussing, and you can continue to debate it back and forth. I was not opposed to looking at, if somebody tells me there is some benefit for our community in learning about a potential to garner more than the basins are currently giving us, I don't know why I would say no to that. And there are some sites where the Gibbons doesn't, it's fenced, it's safe, it's already a pit. Like, do I care if they come take a 5-foot boring? No, as long as you retain the final quality of any discussion about anything that would move forward from what they learn. So, and that is what I said to Steve. For me, in looking at this, it's the importance of recognizing the process and knowing that you retain the authority to make final decisions.
It's not just the authority, it's the information that's been provided to us. Okay?
I definitely.
I'm suggesting, without having said it yet, that we have another meeting, and we have it with the engineers, so that we can discuss options with them as to how to do it without digging a hole. Okay, there are ways to get the information they want, and in fact, probably in many schools, we already have borings in the area, for which we will now then know what the soil characteristics are, for which you can do the analysis from those borings, and then you can actually not have to dig a hole anywhere. Because at each school site, that we have historical borings that were on the drawings for which the school was built. We also have the design calculations for the runoff and inflow into the drainage system that's built at the high school, and there's no reason not to consider that. Adding more for no purpose other than answering the question of somehow these sites are going to add water to the aquifer that we pump water out of, in 99% of the cases that you've shown me here, is not going to do it. So to the extent that you put a pit at Hastings, all you're doing is directing it through the ground to Cedar Swamp, which is right next door. That's the hydraulic end of the water flow there. And it isn't much different in other places. So my recommendation to the school committee, and I'll make it a motion, is that we ask Chris to bring the engineers back, and we can do it with a, say, a 2-member committee from the school committee, to listen to the story and ask these technical questions and have them answer those questions for the school committee to have the opportunity to then decide whether we're going to do this or not. Because the consequence of, in effect, starting a process for which you don't know the benefit is some kind of an impact that usually costs money. And since that money on school property comes from the school budget or from town meeting based on an article before the town, we might go through all of this and the town says, no, we're not going to spend any money on that. So anyway, that's my motion. I would move that the school committee consider having I guess, an open meeting, but a meeting at some other location with the engineer so that we can have this discussion with them as to the merits of all this stuff based on what I know, the characteristics of soil in this town.
I'll second that.
Any other discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Work with...
Opposed, you have to ask for opposed.
Who's opposed? Okay, so it appears to be 4-0. Could you speak to why you're opposed?
Yeah, sure. I think that, after reading about the 3 schools and the 3 sites, I am not opposed to digging a pit at Gibbons and Armstrong sites because there's already a fenced-off, pitted area there, and reading about what could ultimately happen there is just to improve the stormwater management that's happening there to begin with. So I don't see those two sites disturbing anything about our schools. They already fill up and, fill with water and come down with water all the time. So I wouldn't be opposed of approving that right off the bat and then learning more about the high school in Hastings. That's my opinion.
Well, that's fine. I guess the difference between what I know and,
Yeah, it's
what-
not my area of
what your
expertise. I'm just
feeling
going
is.
off what is on here, so.
but like I said, the town spent millions analyzing the water flow through the town for its aquifer. And
Can I ask a point of information on process, just to make sure you guys can keep things moving forward? So I know that so timeline-wise, you have options if you want to do it. I heard two things, which is you either post it as a meeting and you could do it as a Zoom and they could join you and you could ask your questions and you could do it as a posted meeting, or you take a subcommittee of up to 2 people and meet with the engineers and gain the information you need to then move forward. So with a yes or a no. So that's what I hear. I know you are, literally, it's a grant process. Do you have a timeline that is impacted or that you're trying to live within informationally? Can you give us an idea?
Yeah, I think that the best approach would be just, we're going to move on with our other sites. And
well, that's fine. Or you could include these and then not have them when you finally get there. At this point, you come before the school committee with a program that you've probably been working on for 6 months or a year and ask us at the last minute to approve something.
But that's not true. That's not accurate.
How long have you been working on this?
This thing was contracted a couple of months ago, and those months were used to take, as I said earlier, a number of sites around the town and reduce that to a small list because it's based on funding, so we can only do test pits at a certain number of sites. Those sites we're constrained by the money, right? We're always constrained by money. So we have a limited number of sites. So we tried to pick the best sites based on all the factors we know about. I appreciate your history here and all the things you know, but I don't know all that, and I want someone professionally to tell me in a report that says, don't go to this site, it doesn't work, or go to this site. So we picked what we thought, we being smart people like Joe and others who have been in the town for a really long time, and the professionals we hired to identify these sites. That's what we did. So to the point is we're on a timeline because it's a grant. And so we need to get these test pits done so that we can then progress to the analysis and complete by the time we have to be done with the grant. So it's not really worth it to me to spend the next couple of weeks debating about something that I think it's pretty straightforward. And so we'll move on. It's fine. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you, and we'll move to somewhere else. It's not a problem.
So be it.
And can I just speak to process-wise?
You told us there isn't any.
I didn't say that, Steve.
No, what
Come
you
on.
said was that you're going to move on without these sites. Yes?
You
Is
said
that
that,
what
yeah,
you said?
you said there's no process. There's a process.
Okay, your process is for the rest of your sites at the grant.
Okay.
If you're not going to speak to us and give us the information by virtue of the meeting I suggested, I assume you're going to move on without the information for us. That's fine. Yes? No?
No, Kristen said there was a process question, and you said there's no process. So
It's not a process question. I just want to speak to our process, as a school committee, when generally we are having something up for a vote or a deliberation. I mean, with public meeting, we have to deliberate here.
Yep.
And this is a lot to take in and learn. I'm not an engineer, So I would have appreciated having it come to one meeting, then we have between that meeting, and then the vote is the next meeting. I understand maybe you were on a time crunch with the holidays and everything, but in terms of process, that feels better, so that we can have questions answered in between. So that's for future projects.
Yes, typically we would have presented this, you would have had time for a meeting in between, and then a vote on the, whatever it is, when is our next meeting, the 19th or whatever it is, so.
Whatever, yeah.
Yes, typically, that is our process. I think your vote allowed for that to happen, where you could learn that information, and then you could vote at your next meeting to move forward with selections of those pits.
Yeah.
I think I respectfully allow you to move forward in the grant as the way you would like. If you want to include potentially the sites at the school, then you do have time to maybe host a conversation, and then they can vote at their next meeting to include sections of the sites you marked if they so choose. And you can complete the grant without them, your choice, you're running the grant. And so structurally, we put it in front of you as soon as we received it, and, you know, included you the opportunity to start to learn about it. And I believe that process-wise, we have time to act, but I don't know when you have to submit. So, you know, I'll leave you to move forward, and then process-wise, if you guys change your mind and want to hold that meeting, they voted that you could. All right.
If there will be a meeting to provide information, I would like to know it, because it's the responsibility of the chair to create agendas for meetings. Open to a direct discussion. If Fuss and O'Neill is available, that we will find either two of us to attend it, or if we have enough time to post it, then it would be the whole committee's opportunity.
Sounds good. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Good.
Moving on, the next item on the agenda is the electronic bus discussion. I assume it's meant to be electric. Well, one agenda had it electric.
I think it's a typo.
Anyway, it is 7:53, so we're a little over. Okay, Amber, who's going to do that?
So our next item for the agenda is the start of a conversation, no action required. I want to be clear before we open this conversation that we are not asking for anything. We are not looking for you to vote. We are bringing information forward for you to begin to learn about the process of what we have learned about electric buses. We have Yakub, who's given you informal verbal reports. We've had a generalized interest in learning about electric buses over the last several years to expand our knowledge around potential opportunities, and we're now at the place where we could make decisions for your future. So I asked, and I want to thank Tony LeMay, our new Assistant Director of Buildings and Grounds, and Yakub and myself synthesized, after getting good feedback from Steve around what he hoped to see in a report to you. And this is what you have before you. So I guess I would turn it over to Tony to go ahead, and we'll complement each other with input as needed. Why don't you walk us through kind of what we've learned, and then the goal is to open it for general conversation so you can start to develop a knowledge base. And Yakub, you guys can go. I mean, you're the most knowledgeable, so, you know, present to us kind of what we know.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi, Tony.
So, as Amber said, I was asked to go over and learn about electrification of school buses, find out funding sources that are out there and available, and try to come up with some plans on if Westborough decides to go down that road, what it possibly could look like. So right now, there's federal grants through the EPA, there's state grants through a couple different entities in Massachusetts, and we've partnered with a few just to start to learn what we have as a fleet in the town, what it might look like if we did start to go with it, you know, the number of buses that we'd be looking at, and what other funds are available and how we can go about getting them for us. So what we've kind of looked at has been three different routes that Westborough could possibly go with. One is, our bus contract has a little over a year left on it existing, so it's kind of a good time to start thinking about where we want to go. If we want to, one, stay with the route we're going, sign on with diesel fleets, third parties, and just keep rolling through like we have been for many years. The other option we have is to possibly maybe split that, start with the diesel fleets, but sign contracts where we want to phase in an electric fleet over the course of a year, a contract, a 5-year contract or a 3-year contract, however we want to do it. So, we can do something about, signing a contract. We need 27 buses currently. Over the first 3 years, every year, we want to phase in, say, 5 buses. Everyone I've talked to has said you don't want to go 100% electric for your bus fleet. The buses currently, they're estimating 100 to 120 miles on a charge. Realistically, you're probably going to run around 70 miles, so you wouldn't want to do anything that's going to be over the 60 to 70 mile range because you're not going to have anywhere to charge. So a lot of your sporting events that are away, field trips, stuff like that, you're still going to need diesel buses to operate. You can still pull them into a station and fuel up somewhere. So that's why, if you have a 5-year contract over the first 5 years, every year you do 5 buses, you have 15 electric, and you're still running 12 diesel. It kind of gives you the ability to just roll and play with that. And under that, you could either sign with one contractor and have them phase it in, or you could sign with 2 contracts. One of the companies we were talking with to get a lot of the information was Highland Fleet out of Beverly. They currently operate all over the country. They have thousands of buses in their current fleet. And the way they operate is you sign a contract with them, and they come in and put the infrastructure in for you. They procure all the buses for you, and you pay them a yearly fee or a per run fee, just like we do right now. But it's less than what we currently pay for a diesel. Reason is they have the tax write-off of the bus. We're able to purchase buses and they'll operate it. The operations are full maintenance, full guaranteed a working bus every morning, the electricity, and the infrastructure is all working. So that's where you're paying them every month. The downside is you have to find your own bus drivers. They don't supply drivers. So we kind of move into supporting our full fleet by ourselves, operating them, scheduling runs, finding drivers if someone calls out sick. So there's other things that we need to worry about. And then there's the third one where we could just go and buy a bunch of electric buses ourselves, put in the infrastructure, do all the maintenance. But that's a very large cost to the town of Westborough to now fund all that. So that would be a long-term goal, not something in the next 5 years, 10 years, whatever.
One of the things that, is important to process is it's a lot of content to take in, so we're providing it for you. You get a first pass, we got the packet early so you could look at it, and then you've got time to continue to digest this report and then layer in questions. The target, I think, is one of the first important things for you to begin considering, which is, we have to put the contract out to bid, end of next year. So you've got between now and when you develop that bid, so you've got a window here. So we're bringing this forward so you can start a discussion. Do you want to form a subcommittee? Do you want to do all of it in public discussion like this where we bring forward pieces? I just want to organize the start of a process with you. So this is general information for the whole committee. And then we need to continue to think about how you want to formulate coming up with a proposal for a plan. And you have between now and when you develop your bid, kind of as an anchor target, because you wouldn't want to develop a bid that didn't run in some succession with your bigger thinking, right? You also, your other option is take a knee, like, well, I guess that's number one, you just keep doing what you're doing. I think long-term, we want to understand what we're giving up if we do that and what the cost benefits are for us, So I do think if you look at, just to complement what Tony just added, if you look at option 2, we tried to, give you a model for different ways with option 2 where you can start to think about, like, if we developed, and again, contracts are driven by how we design the bid. Do you want to build in options to consider it further down the road in years 4 and 5 of the bus contract? Those are the types of things I just want you to begin thinking about as you have general conversation. And then if you wanted to do that, you have these options as these other companies are starting to emerge for ways to interact. One of the things that we also tried to give you a picture of is, these grants obviously are complex, and so given the timetable and the complexity of them, they come and they cycle, they pass. So we are modeling the ones that have come forward as examples. Some of these aren't ones we can participate in this cycle, maybe future, right, is where we left it, because we weren't ready and didn't want to, but we're providing those as a design sample so you can see the types of grant opportunities that would drive what we would do. Do you have Jakub, do you have things you want to add to the package of the presentation?
Well, I just want to add, I participated in one of the first talks with Highland back in spring, and you probably feel the same way, Tony, is that there's just many, many ways that we can go about it, and I don't feel knowledgeable enough. I don't have access to all the information, how this will impact the budget, because there's a variety of options here. So it requires a lot more work to understand. First of all, do we want to own the buses? Do we want to lease them? Do you want to? As you lay them out, there's just a lot of options there. I do have a question about the range, because they mentioned that the range is about, I think, 100, 120, but then they admitted, I asked them about winter time, the performance dropped. So they were doing some testing in Alaska, as we spoke back then, and they were saying it was about 60, 70 miles, like you mentioned.
Yeah.
Do you know what's the average route, in the morning, and like how many miles our buses make? Because they only need that morning route, then they can recharge for the afternoon.
Yeah, so I asked Cindy Crowley, our transportation person, about an estimate on miles, and they said about 26 to 28 miles is a round trip per bus run. Currently, the city of Boston has 20 electric buses in their fleet of 780 buses. They don't schedule anything that's over 40 miles for a round trip. So they're even keeping it below that 60 to 70 that the bus manufacturers are saying. So our 26 to 28 would be fine on that, according to all the data that's currently out there.
So in case of some emergency, we're short of buses, that would be a further complication, I guess, too.
Yes.
A question I had, first of all, thank you for this report that you guys have put this together, because it's very informative and clear. I'm sure there's, like you said, so many options that it can get confusing. With the Highland fleet, I understand that they would come and build all the infrastructure. If they leave, they take the infrastructure with them? Or I'm wondering if there's a way that it's like rent to own, kind of like we pay them so much and then we own the infrastructure in the parking lot or wherever.
So they would put it in, and if they left, they would take the chargers with them. The chargers are proprietary to them.
Okay.
But all the wiring, the piping, the concrete pads, all that stuff would stay in place.
Okay. Oh, that's interesting. I didn't realize that the charging itself is proprietary to that bus that they have.
Based
I
on
guess. Yeah.
based on the battery and whatever the system is to charge it.
Okay.
It's the software that's built in that's
Okay.
there.
Sarah?
Okay.
So I have some questions more about the success and how that this has been implemented in other districts. So you've mentioned the city of Boston and that they're using these buses. How long have they been using them? How has it been working? Has it been cost effective? Has there been any safety issues? I mean, I'm more concerned about just this new idea of using electric buses, especially when, we've had so much great luck with the busing situation as it is. Drivers, I'm not concerned about. We've had to get our own drivers anyway. So I think that that's sort of just an industry-wide issue. But I am just, nervous to, allocate funds towards anything that we don't have really solid, long-term data on in terms of how it's been operating for these other districts.
Yeah, so the city of Boston has been using their buses, different versions of them. They've cycled some in and out already. They've been using them for 10, 12, 15 years, depending on the model and stuff like that. They have seen positive feedback from students riding it, the parents, from, they don't have that noise, they don't have the exhaust emissions. They haven't had, to my knowledge, that we've talked about, they haven't had any major issues with the buses themselves, besides, your basic stuff, tires that might pop and go flat, or a couple charging issues here and there. But they've been, because they have such a large fleet, they're able to bring in a substitute bus and take care of it. I know I'm gonna give you the wrong data on this, but they're trying to 100% cycle out their diesel buses over like the next 15 years. I think by 2050 was their goal to be 100% cycled out, but I think they're trying to push for that 15-year mark every year to cycle out a large number of their buses. So they're trying to go 100% electric over the next 25 years or so.
No, additional things to consider. The buses can be, the batteries in those buses can be used as energy storage when the buses are not being used. So in the summertime or on the weekends, they can be used to store energy when it's cheap. So you charge them when the energy is cheap off peak, and then you sell it when the energy usage is at its peak. So you can make some money. And Highland, that's what they were encouraging us to consider. But it's not clear how much we would actually, if it's any significant amount of money or not.
On-peak and off-peak doesn't exist anymore. It's just not here. That's because power plants that we have are being eliminated. So there isn't excess power. Off-peak used to be based on the ability of nukes to generate at night because you couldn't throttle them up or down. Anyway, that economic market doesn't exist anymore, as we know from energy sales and purchases at fails. Just to put this in perspective in terms of what we have 27 buses, I think, today. At least that's what we wanted, and we don't have 27 actually running. But so if you do the math, and based on the memo, I think the number was 350,000 per bus.
Yes.
Yeah. So 350,000 times 27 is 9,450,000 if we replace the fleet. This is such a significant story for the school committee to consider. As Kristen brought up, one of the offers in here is some company that would control the buses. We hire the drivers. They pick up, I mean, right now our problems aren't so much with the buses, but with the companies that we hire, because in my opinion, there's collusion. And in fact, when we get a bid, we only get a bid from one outfit. So having only one outfit available right now to supply this service is a problem. Given the fact that we have options here, what I would suggest the school committee consider is creating a subcommittee to get all of the information, contracts, et cetera, in hand, and develop what are the pros and cons of each one of them, and what's the economic benefit or problem associated with each one of those options, so that then we can pursue either or all of them in terms of what we do. As was mentioned, we have roughly a year to be able to do this. But this is a significant decision on the basis of what the school committee will not only decide, but what we will commit the town to. And it can't be done willy-nilly. As far as I'm concerned, I only know what's on, whatever this was, 5 pages worth of a memo, based on the research that you've done so far. My experience with doing this kind of stuff is to put all of the packages on the table. What grants are out there, why we want to use this grant or that grant, why we want to apply to it, who's gonna build the grant, what is going to be our cost benefit of doing this in terms of the options. We may not have a choice as to whether we go to electric buses. That may be mandated, but we certainly can be smart enough to choose the one that benefits us the most and costs us the least, because once we've committed, we're in it. And we will be in it. And you know, when this first started, they were giving buses to Boston at $800,000 apiece. Now we're talking $350,000. I can't imagine the gasoline-driven buses are anywhere near that.
Well, actually, I can actually tell you that I was going to add this for context. So back in spring, they were quoting 400,000, so the price dropped. But I don't know, there are also different options. I don't think they have air conditioning. At the time, the conversation, the diesel buses cost about 120,000.
So I mean, the benefit clearly from changing from gasoline or diesel to this, at least in the purchase price. The other thing that I know from past discussions about buses, my understanding, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts requires that buses be replaced every 5 years. That was a way to ensure that the contractors who were putting buses into service for schools, you know, had brand-new buses every 5 years, not something that would run until it didn't run. So to the extent that that still exists, maybe that law can be changed, but to the extent it still exists, that means that we would have to replace the fleet. Well, you'd have to do it every 5 years for all 27 buses, which to me says, wait a minute, we got to deal with that one first before we invest in this stuff. So again, I think there's myriad of different questions that such a committee could put on the table and begin to study and come up with answers to it. And to me, that's the most important one right away, is what is state law relative to the use of school buses? And then we go from there. So I would move that you consider that we create a subcommittee to begin assembling all this stuff, what the characteristics of the grants are, what are we committed to if we accept the grant. As Tony said, perhaps we're committed to having additional buses to do trips to other schools, being diesel buses, which otherwise would sit. You know, so again, I think there's a lot of things to learn. As we know, from an ownership point of view of running your own system, I know that there are schools on the South Shore towards the Cape that actually own and operate their own buses. And so there may be merit to us from that point of view, because the drivers would be employees of the town, for which they would not be allowed to go on strike, versus what we were subject to last year in regards to a union decided they're going to walk, and they did. Was it Newton? Framingham? Framingham.
Marlborough.
And Marlborough. I guess Marlborough solved the problem by throwing money at it. But anyway, so those are all issues that I think are on the table for this. And again, you know, I would like to know and be put in front of us a technical options analysis with a cost benefit of why you choose this over that. And it's an important study. I think the school committee is required to pay that kind of attention to it on the basis of, you know, a $10 million budget for school buses every 5 years is pretty wicked. So I suppose we could sell them out west where our current dead buses go. Anyway, so those are my ideas. You know, if anybody wants to discuss that as a potential method to move forward, I'd certainly.
Well, I support the idea of creating a subcommittee. There's just too many questions.
So I think that's almost a motion. He supports the idea, so.
Yeah, I'd like to move that we create a subcommittee to investigate all of the options, and especially relevant to state law concerning electric buses.
Normally, a subcommittee of a 5-member committee would be 2, so that we don't have to post the meetings. But what I would suggest is from time to time that we would, as that subcommittee would come to a point where the rest of the committee needs to know what's going on, that we have a public meeting of all 5 of us. So there could be updates, let's say once a month, and it wouldn't be necessarily at a normally scheduled school committee. It would be a special meeting for that, which could be at any other time of the day that fits all of us. So you made the motion. Is there a second?
I second.
I think with the idea, think about it, and we'll figure out who should be on that committee and how we move forward. So at this point, if there's no other discussion, I'd like to take a vote on the motion to have the school committee create a subcommittee to consider moving forward with electric buses on the basis of a 2-member committee. You guys think about it. We'll talk about it at the next meeting as to who should be on it. Okay? All those in favor? Aye? Looks like it's 5-0-0. Okay. Very good. Next item of the agenda is.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tony.
Thank you, Tony.
Thank you, Tony.
Is the ABC second quarterly update.
Sorry, I'm going to have Anita head home so Tony can help her. Thank you. See you. Can I just clarify the motion? So you're going to form a subcommittee and you'll decide who it's, I just want to pace our work. So if you're going to do a subcommittee, then at the next meeting, I just want to.
Well, appoint the
We need to
members
put
of
it
the
on the
subcommittee.
agenda, so I just want to make sure I have a note. So we'll add it to the agenda to appoint a subcommittee. And as you're considering serving on the committee, you need to let us know who else you need to wrap around. Is it just a 2-person committee and you want to carry that work? Or do you want other people on the committee with you?
I think we'll ask who else will supply information
Right.
to this subcommittee.
I just want you to
Yeah,
think
I don't want to
ahead.
build a whole bunch of people that are difficult to get to a meeting. We
I
can-
don't
We
either.
can create the agenda for what we want and then reach out and ask people to either supply the information or
Yeah, no, I'm
supply
fine
us
with-
the source of the
Yeah,
information.
whatever you design works for me. I'm just saying that I wanted you to think about it between now and when you vote, because when you add 2 people to the committee, have a picture for what that volume of work is and what you need to produce and who you need to help you. And I would agree with you, the 2 people could carry it and ask for requested information, whatever you prefer. But just as you project ahead, so that when you have the discussion at the next meeting, I'll put it on the agenda and you guys can go back and look at the report some more, think about that. I think a subcommittee is a great idea. I think we expected that to be the outcome. I just think we have capacity limit, space, size, time, and we have a year, and that's a good word. You could decide if you're not ready to do that in a year, you pass, so you've got options, you're in control of it. And I'll put it on the next agenda and you guys can continue the discussion around what that committee would look like.
Right, I mean, I just imagine, Amber, you would want to know if we would want staff on our committee, then you have to allocate that time, so to make sure they are available, like, for example, Tony or someone. So it makes sense to
Yeah,
think about it.
definitely.
Well, I think the bottom line is all the references that were used in order to prepare this, as well as the grant options that are out there. Obviously, at this point, they may come and go, but I think that's how you begin to generate information. It's my need as a member of the committee to be able to analyze a report that gives me the cost benefit of the options that we'll consider, not a summary of that, because once we're committed, we're committed. And it's big bucks. So
I agree.
that's my feeling.
I think, well, sorry, just one last thing, but I think there's a piece to look at also the vans as transportation, as a way
mean,
to
yeah.
go electric as well.
Yeah.
And I would just want to know if NRT is planning on adding electric. Like, I'm sure these companies are getting pressure to add electric buses to their own fleets. So if we contract with them, could we?
Yeah, there's also, I mean, this
There's
is
so many
why, this is
things.
what it looks like when you open up a discussion. We wanted to bring it before you, hand it to you as a committee, and let you begin to grapple with how you want to move forward. We've given you a window of a year to contemplate it. I think that's a viable, appropriate window.
Yeah.
And those are the types of questions, when you put together a committee, they want to say, okay, we learned enough to scaffold the desire to form a committee and to then produce the additional layers of information that you feel you need in order to make a decision and to pace out deciding to, move it further out in our timeline of costs. I mean, I think Steve's surfaced the financial obligations, are important for us to look at. And then you might kick that can down the road to the end of the bus contract, even buy yourself space, right? You might, so there's options. I mean, we have put a good amount of thinking into, based upon what we have learned thus far, to understand the range of the kind of ways you can package options. And then you can look at, how to move forward. So yeah, fine with all of that. I'll put it on the agenda and then you guys can continue to kind of.
Hallie would like to be on the committee.
You can address the chair at the next meeting and volunteer. Okay, so, thank you.
Could be the secretary, which means they put you on the committee.
She's already doing the green committee.
she'll do the
She's
research.
busy. Okay, so
Good.
you
You'll
asked.
make a lot of money with that.
Yeah. All right, you wanted to move to the last item on the agenda. We need to finish up, we're over time. So this is just the annual quarterly update. We need to do 4. This is the second as we progress through the year. This shows you their audit is clean. It shows you that they have, this is a good report that just shows that while there are financial challenges and a lot of collaboratives are struggling to come back from the impact of very small little networks, and so heavily impacted by COVID, heavily impacted by losses of certain things. And right now they have a building project that got stalled because they were contesting it, and that's costing them some impact. Despite all of those, their audit indicates that they're viable and have stability and are within their spending limits. So that's a summary for you. You don't need to look at it, but I want to be on record as, bringing it forward to you in a thoughtful way that you can read it if you're interested. If something happens at the collaborative that makes us at risk, it is the job of the superintendent to bring that up to you and hold it up and change the conversation. These quarterly reports right now indicate that things are fine, and our investment in our participation and cost doesn't, I believe, put us at risk. But as you move forward, the superintendent who sits on the board is charged with making sure that we are fiscally responsible so that when you as a committee vote to be a member, you're not putting yourselves at risk and you're getting the benefits of the collaborative. No benefit comes without risk. I mean, Steve was just holding up risk analysis. So these reports tell you that your risk balance is still very good for our participation in the collaborative. And I believe that they will continue to improve as the collaborative restabilizes with their additional professional development space and 2 additional programs they're looking to open. So that's my summary on the report. You don't have to vote, you're just receiving it and it's in record. So that brings you to the end of your meeting.
Okay, what I would like to see next time around is a comparison, let's say it's the third quarter report between the third quarter this year and the third quarter last year. It's very hard to figure out, mentally, I guess, based on the way this is presented, what it really means. This might feel. So it's much like what we already had earlier tonight that Anita put together, something like that.
I mean, she has, yeah, all right, you can walk
Put together
me.
that table, and if it was, let's say these items, these 5 bullets were presented that way, last year, this year at the third quarter point.
I can ask her for that. I mean, as a member of the board, I can ask her to prepare it.
Yeah.
Do you want to see that in the third quarter report or?
Yeah, this one's okay. We won't waste their time to go back and do that again. It's a very interesting summary from the CPA. Again, it's, you know, usually they put together a table that tells you what's what. Anyway,
I mean, there's a large, yeah, yes. I mean, they're not my auditor, so I just took what they gave us at the board and listened to their report and understand that they're fiscally solvent enough to keep us out of risk.
that's the best answer you
Pretty
can have.
much, that's the only answer I wanted for my role on that board. I'm willing to do more work on it. You need to, again, look at cost-effective
that
value
shouldn't take 'em very
of
long
our,
to do,
yes, so I will definitely ask for it. Okay.
It'll help them solve problems if they find problems as
they've
they do
got-
it, just like we
yeah.
did
Yeah.
earlier tonight. So that would be the end of the meeting. Anybody else have anything you want to add, comments, et cetera?
I'd like to move to adjourn.
All right, is there a second?
Yes, I'll second that.
All those in favor? Apparently 500.
We're all
Very
waiting
good.
to make the
Yes.
motion.
Thank you all.